What if I told you there's a place in the United States that's smaller than a classroom? Another where the ground has been on fire for decades. And one fact so strange it completely changes how you think about maps? Stay with me. Let's begin. Fact 50. Buford, Wyoming. Population 1. Imagine being the mayor, janitor, and government all at once. Thousands zoom past, but only one calls it home. Noisy neighbors? Not here. Fact 49. Alaska is both the farthest west and farthest east state. The Aleutian Islands cross the 180th meridian, technically stretching into the eastern hemisphere. Maps don't lie. Fact 48. The Roe River in Montana, just 61 meters long. You can finish a phone call before you finish walking its entire length. It's that short. Fact 47. The Northwest Angle. To reach this part of Minnesota by car, you have to drive through Canada first. One of the strangest border quirks on the planet. Fact 46. Lajitas, Texas. It literally rains fish. Waterspouts scoop them up and dump them when the wind dies. It's wild, but 100% real. Fact 45. Some towns have made it illegal to die because cemeteries are full. It's a symbolic no vacancy for the afterlife. Local trivia gold. Fact 44. Minnesota has more shoreline than the entire U.S. East Coast, over 18,000 miles of lakefronts. You can't throw a rock without hitting a boat dock. Fact 43. We mentioned Alaska being in 2 hemispheres, but some geographers argue this makes certain Alaskan towns Bi-Hemispheric cities. Just like Istanbul sits on 2 continents, these small island communities bridge the gap between the Western and Eastern worlds. It's the only place in America where you can technically stand in the Old World and the New World at the same time. Fact 42. Down in the marshes of Virginia and Maryland, there are islands where wild ponies rule the land. On Assateague and Chincoteague, these feral horses have lived for centuries. Every year, they hold a pony swim, where the horses swim across a channel to help manage the population. It's like a real-life version of a storybook. Fact 41. Some towns celebrate founders, but Nederland, Colorado, celebrates a frozen dead guy. A local man was cryonically preserved in dry ice decades ago, and the town turned the eccentric story into a massive festival. It's a bit macabre, but shows Americans can find a reason to party under any circumstances. Hit subscribe for more weird stories. Fact 40. Deep in the Arizona desert, there is a forest where the trees aren't made of wood. They're made of stone. At Petrified Forest National Park, logs that fell millions of years ago turned into solid quartz and minerals. They look like normal trees, but they're as hard as diamonds, a literal snapshot of a prehistoric world. Fact 39. Not far from the stone trees is a giant hole in the ground. Meteor crater is nearly a mile wide and was created 50,000 years ago. It's so well preserved that NASA used it to train Apollo astronauts because the terrain looks exactly like the moon. Fact 38. Centralia, Pennsylvania is literally on fire. In the 1960s, a coal seam caught fire underground and it has been burning ever since. The ground is hot, smoke rises from cracks in the road, and the town is almost entirely abandoned. It's the real-life inspiration for horror movies. Fact 37. In California, the trees are so big, they actually have tunnels through them. The giant coastal redwoods are massive enough that early developers carved out holes for cars to drive through. You can still drive your SUV right through the heart of a living tree. It's like driving through a natural skyscraper. Fact 36. Water usually flows down, right? Well, in Maine, the Kennebec River sometimes flows uphill. Because of massive tides, seawater is stronger than the current. For a few hours a day, the river reverses direction. It's a glitch in nature. Fact 35. Most lakes freeze solid in winter, but Crater Lake in Oregon is different. It's the deepest lake in the U.S. and holds heat so well, it almost never freezes. Even with 20 feet of snow, the water stays a brilliant liquid sapphire. Fact 34. If you hate traffic, you'll love Mackinac Island in Michigan. Cars have been banned since the late 1800s. People get around by walking, riding bikes, or using horse-drawn carriages. It's a quiet paradise that feels like the 1880s. Fact 33. Utah is home to a man-made hole so big that astronauts can see it from space. The Bingham Canyon mine is over half a mile deep and 2 miles wide. You could stack 2 Empire State Buildings inside and still not reach the top. Fact 32. Alaska has the most volcanoes in the country, over 130 of them. While people think of Hawaii, Alaska is part of the Ring of Fire and is constantly being reshaped by ice and fire. Remote eruptions are often only spotted by satellites. Fact 31. The Great Basin Desert in Nevada is a cold desert. Because of its elevation, it gets buried in snow in the winter. You can see a cactus one day and need a heavy parka the next. Proof that dry doesn't always mean sunny. Fact 30. There is one specific spot where you can be in 4 states at once. At the Four Corners Monument, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado all meet. You can put your hands and feet in 4 different states simultaneously. The ultimate photo op. Fact 29. Time travel is real on the border of Idaho and Oregon. Some towns sit right on the time zone line, cross the street to gain an hour, or walk back to lose it. Residents have to be very careful with their alarm clocks. Fact 28. New York City is so densely packed that its population is bigger than 40 of the 50 states. If NYC were its own state, it would be one of the most powerful in the country. More people live on one city block than in some entire counties in the Midwest. Fact 27. Along Route 66, there's a town that legally protects its dinosaurs. Holbrook, Arizona, is famous for giant concrete dinosaur statues. The locals are so proud of these quirky reptiles that they've become official landmarks, a piece of Americana history. Fact 26. Mauna Kea in Hawaii is technically the tallest mountain on Earth. Measured from the ocean floor, it stands over 33,000 feet tall, 4,000 feet taller than Everest. Its base is simply hidden underwater, like a giant iceberg made of rock. Fact 25. You can visit Europe without a passport. The US is full of towns named after European capitals. Start in Paris, Texas, drive through Athens, Georgia, and end in Berlin, New Hampshire. Many even have mini replicas of the Eiffel Tower or Greek ruins. Fact 24. In certain coastal towns, there are mailboxes specifically for whales. While whales can't read, these whale mailboxes allow children to write messages about ocean conservation to migrating sea giants. It's a charming way to connect people with nature. Fact 23. If you think you're a bad artist, there's a place for you in Massachusetts. The Museum of Bad Art is dedicated to art too bad to be ignored. They collect paintings that are unintentionally hilarious or strangely proportioned. Even if you're not Picasso, your work might end up here. Fact 22. The US has a museum for almost everything. There is a museum dedicated entirely to bananas in California and one for mustard in Wisconsin. It turns out the story of everyday items like the banana is a lot more dramatic than you'd think. Fact 21. Square dancing isn't just a gym class nightmare. It's the official state dance of several states, including Virginia. Keeping this folk tradition alive is a matter of law in these states, ensuring the doozy-doo never goes out of style. Fact 20. Just like the Four Corners, there are markers where you can stand in 2 different counties and 2 different states simultaneously. These geographical quadripoints are rare, but they allow you to claim 4 distinct legal jurisdictions without taking a single step. Fact 19. Some towns are named after cartoon characters. Whether it's a nod to Tweety Bird or other icons, these towns often decorate their water towers and signs with the characters. It's a great way to get travelers to stop for a souvenir t-shirt. Fact 18. Nature can build bridges better than humans sometimes. In Virginia and Utah, there are natural bridges. Massive stone arches carved by water over millions of years. Some are so sturdy they once served as actual roads for carriages and early cars. Fact 17. Colorado is home to the Great Sand Dunes, which are taller than some skyscrapers. Reaching over 750 feet high, they sit right at the base of snowy mountains. It looks like a piece of the Sahara was accidentally dropped in the middle of the Rockies. Fact 16. Have you ever seen a waterfall flow backward? In Hawaii and the Pacific Northwest, winds can get so strong in canyons that they catch falling water and spray it straight back up. From a distance, it looks like the waterfall has lost its mind. Fact 15. Oregon has a lost lake that literally disappears. Every winter it fills up, but in summer, the water drains through an ancient lava tube, basically a giant hole in the bottom. It's like someone pulled the plug in a bathtub. Fact 14. Vermont and California are famous for tree tunnels. These are roads where the trees on both sides have grown so tall, their branches lace together over the top. Driving through them feels like entering a green cathedral. One of the most cinematic drives imaginable. Fact 13. In the Midwest, a giant ball of twine is a major celebrity. Several towns compete for the title of the world's largest. One ball in Kansas weighs over 20,000 pounds. It's a testament to what happens when you refuse to quit a project for 50 years. Fact 12. Kentucky holds the record for the longest cave system in the world. Mammoth Cave has over 400 miles of explored tunnels. It's so big, it has its own ecosystem with blind fish and eyeless shrimp. Scientists think hundreds of miles are still undiscovered. Fact 11. The Mississippi River is so winding, it's a geographical nightmare. Because of the loops, or meanders, a boat might travel 20 miles along the water to end up 1 mile from where it started. Over time, these loops are cut off, creating oxbow lakes and shifting borders. Fact 10. Alaska has islands where bears outnumber people by a massive margin. In places like Admiralty Island, there is one grizzly bear for every square mile. If you visit, you aren't the top of the food chain anymore. You're just a guest in their living room. Fact 9. In Death Valley, the rocks move by themselves. For years, scientists were baffled by sailing stones that left long tracks in the mud. It turns out that on rare nights, wind pushes thin ice sheets and the rocks across the flat ground. A slow-motion race. Fact 8. U.S. Route 20 is the longest highway in the country. It stretches over 3,300 miles from Boston all the way to Newport, Oregon. If you drove it non-stop, it would take over 50 hours. The ultimate American road trip. Fact 7. There are dark sky parks in Utah and Arizona where the sky is so clear you can see the Milky Way in incredible detail. Because there is no light pollution, the stars are so bright they actually cast a faint shadow on the ground. See the edge of the galaxy. Fact 6. Wisconsin takes its cheese seriously. So seriously, they have festivals dedicated to rolling giant wheels of it down hills. People race to catch the rolling dairy. A messy, hilarious tradition proving Americans turn anything into a sport. Fact 5. Some old cities have accidentally turned their sewers into tourist attractions. In Seattle, the underground consists of original city streets built over after a fire. You can see storefronts from the 1800s buried beneath the modern sidewalk. Fact 4. There is a post office in the U.S. built inside a giant rock overhang. These rock offices were used in the Old West as natural shelters. Some are still preserved in national parks, looking more like a Hobbit movie than a government building. Fact 3. Santa Claus, Indiana is Christmas-themed 365 days a year. Street names include Candy Cane Lane, and the post office receives thousands of letters from children. Volunteers called Santa's Elves ensure every letter gets a response. Fact 2. Lake Tahoe is so clear that if you dropped a dinner plate, you could still see it 30 meters down. The water is mostly snowmelt and so pure that sediment doesn't get stirred up. Boats often look like they are hovering in midair. Fact 1. Finally, our most unbelievable fact. On Lake Michigan, there are mail boats that deliver while moving. The boat slows just enough for the mail carrier to jump onto the dock, swap the mail, and jump back onto the moving boat. A century-old athletic tradition. The United States is full of these bizarre, beautiful, and sometimes fire-breathing secrets. Which of these facts was your favorite? Let us know in the comments. If you want to keep exploring the weirdest corners of our world, hit subscribe. See you there.